racing across America when we've been down in the studio down in Albany. Mike Penna and Jude Feld from the Horse Racing Radio Network. Welcome.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
And I'm assuming you're in for a little Horse Racing Radio Network work. Why don't you let folks know what's coming up?
Yeah, it's been a busy week for us, and we're not done yet. We actually started with our coverage of the Whitney Handicap this past Saturday, which was obviously, as you know, a tremendous race with cross traffic. And then looking ahead what's coming up tonight, we're going to be across the street at the Fasig-Tipton Saratoga Sales Pavilion. We'll be there for the Saratoga Select Yearling Sale and providing that coverage tonight, beginning at 6:30 Eastern Time on Sirius XM, and looking forward to that coverage.
And you're also in town for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, we'll be here for the Hall of Fame next Friday. The Hall of Fame inductions, we'll have that nationally on Sirius XM and on our website, horseracingradio.net, and looking forward to giving people that coverage.
And we always give folks a little rundown of what you've had on recently, because folks can pick it up on the archives. You have a great trainer talk segment every week and handicapping and whatnot. So just let people know what's on weekly that they can catch up with on the archives or live coming up next week.
Yeah, I caught up with George Weaver, who has, of course, been red hot.
Absolutely.
Joe Orsino.
Yeah, I had him on the show. I had to have oven mitt on.
Yeah, he's incredible. And then Joe Orsino joined us on Trainer Talk this past week as well, so I had a chance to catch up with those two individuals, and people can go back to our site and listen to that interview. It's also available on iTunes, Horse Racing Radio Network on iTunes, so you can go listen. The Express Bet Weekend Stakes previews that we host, and then our call-in shows are all there. Dale Romans was our special guest on the call-in show, so people had an opportunity to call in and ask questions of Dale, which was really kind of cool this week.
Very nice. And you got a great summer schedule. Last week down at Monmouth for the Haskell. This week the Whitney, Arlington coming up with the Arlington Million a little later on, Travers, and Personal Ensign and the Pacific Classic for Del Mar coverage. Parks, you got the Turf Monster. We have Keith Jones as a regular on the show, and that Turf Monster is really a nice little grass turf stake.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, we can't wait to get to that. It's all part of our Road to the Breeders' Cup broadcast series. We'll be at the Breeders' Cup with 20 hours of coverage if we're still breathing and alive by then, because it's a lot. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Well, I'd like to get both of your comments on. Last week you covered the Haskell down at Monmouth. The 3-year-old season really heated up last week with Palace Malice here and Verrazano down at Monmouth. We're going to watch the stretch run of the Haskell, where Verrazano was very impressive. I'd like to get both of your comments. Judy, as a former trainer, I'd love to hear what you think of Verrazano, because there's been a lot of discussion during the week. Verrazano, time was slow, but the figure, a 1:16, up here in Saratoga, Palace Malice a faster time, but a lower figure of about 1:05. But your thoughts on Verrazano and Palace Malice as we move forward to the Travers?
Well, I thought Verrazano was breathtaking, and he's an amazing-looking horse. I mean, he came into the paddock, he looked like a beast. He ran to his looks. I thought it was the best race I had ever seen in person. I was so impressed with him.
Best race overall?
Overall. And I've seen, I don't know how many thousands of races, but I thought that was just a spectacular race. I left there with a smile on my face. I was so happy that I was there for that.
It was absolutely impressive. And again, I thought Palace Malice now has strung a couple together. And Oxbow came out with a little bit of a wrenched ankle, so he's iffy for the Travers. But I think the nice performance by Verrazano is setting up a really good Travers with Orb on the comeback, Palace Malice now. And I think Verrazano threw his hat in the ring for a potential 3-year-old Eclipse, which means I think he kind of has to show up at the Travers, doesn't he?
Well, I think it's from what I've read, Todd's headed that way, and it is shaping up to be a great race. I hope everybody stays sound and gets to the race the way that the trainers want, because it'll be a great matchup.
Yeah, and we're also going to pick up and watch. I wanted to show a replay of the West Virginia Derby from the past weekend, because we talked about departing a lot on the show back at the beginning of the year when we were in the studio, but we've talked also the past couple of weeks about departing. We had Al Stahl on the show. He thought the horse was coming into it well. We're going to see departing win pretty easily here. And Mike, what I find interesting is my boy Uncaptured won at Fort Erie the other night, which I was happy to see. And Mark Tassi said, wherever Verrazano's going, I'm not. Departing now, when Al Stahl was on, he said that Travers was a possibility if they ran well here, but now they're looking maybe Pennsylvania Derby, Super Derby. I'm wondering if the Travers is going to wind up to be a short, small quantity, but high quality off of that Verrazano performance.
Yeah, I think probably so. And, when you take a look at a horse like Departing, he is very, very good. But I think he's always been considered just a notch below the Verrazanos and the Orbs of the world. But he's very good. They are going to look at the Pennsylvania Derby as a possibility for him, which would be a great fit for him. And why not? Why take on the big boys if you don't have to? There's a lot of other money out there that you can pick up in these other stakes races. And, quite honestly, he's going to be a short price in a race like the Pennsylvania Derby, whereas if he shows up here for the Travers, he's going to be a bit of a long shot and have to take on the big boys.
Yeah, I would love to see him come up, but I think you're exactly right. And Al Stahl being a Louisiana guy, Super Derby wouldn't even surprise me if he went in that direction.
Sure.
But there is a lot of money out there if you got like the king of the next level. We've seen that year in and year out. Woody Stevens used to every year, it seems like, have a horse that was at that next level, and he'd bounce around Ohio Derby, Pennsylvania Derby, and there's a lot of money out there if you got a nice horse at that level. Well, let's go back also. I mean, this past weekend on the radio you covered the Whitney, and that was an impressive performance. I had Andy Serling on before, and as I said to him, he mentioned on the pregame show on Saturday, but for a head and a nose, we'd be talking about the next coming of Pegasus on this horse, and finally the coming out party on Saturday was kind of impressive.
Yeah, he ran a super race, and it was a little bit surprising to me because he'd only run one-turn races, and he came out and blew him away 2 turns, a mile and an eighth, and that's a distance that always is a question mark whether horses can get that mile and an eighth. It's like a fine line between a horse that can go a mile and an eighth and go on to a horse that's really a mile and a 16th horse. But he proved that he's got that ability, and he beat a good field of horses. So Todd's amazing. He did this with Graydar earlier in the year, and here's just another example of a horse that's got a lot of speed that Todd puts in a big race and steals it.
Yeah, and I think a Hall of Fame ride from John Velasquez as well. I mean, how good is Johnny V? He puts the horse on the lead, slows the pace down, and has just enough left here in the end, and very calculated. The early fractions, very sensible in terms of what we've seen in the past from a horse like Cross Traffic, and tip your hat to John Velasquez because he showed why he is in the Hall of Fame and why he's so good.
Yeah, we talked about it with Andy. Before the race, the discussion was a lot on pace, and when Fort Larned broke maybe a little slowly, that allowed Cross Traffic to get the easy 24 opening. Now it was a legitimate 110 and change after that, but that opening quarter made a lot of difference there, set things up for a nice race down the stretch. And I thought it was a good performance by Successful Dan and Mucho Macho Man also.
Yeah, extremely good performance. Successful Dan having the issues in the pre-race, but certainly coming back and running a tremendous race to be second. And then Mucho Macho Man, I thought he may have arguably been the most impressive outside of the top two. It's easy to say because he finished third, but he ran a really good race, and with everything that he's had to overcome physically and with his illness with the virus earlier this season, to come back and to run the way he did, a great training job by Kathy Ritvo, and nice to see him back on top of his game, and that should set him up very well moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to be interested to see when the NTRA poll comes out later today, the weekly poll. Now, are you guys voters on that?
I am, yeah.
All right, so who'd you put on top?
Well, it's funny.
Where'd you put Cross Traffic?
I was the contrarian the past couple of weeks. I was the only person that gave Fort Larned the nod as the number one horse in the poll, but after that performance the other day, very disappointing from him. I think I'm going to have to knock him down a few pegs, and it's probably going to be Wise Dan. I think I'll go with the majority now and put Wise Dan, reigning horse of the year, on top.
Yeah, and of course we'll see Wise Dan coming up shortly as well. It's been a great Saratoga meet. I know you've been here the last few days certainly, but you've been watching from afar, I'm sure. Been impressed by anything else at the meet so far?
Well, the 2-year-olds are always exciting, and it's great to see horses develop. But yesterday, in the first race, there was a horse, Calm Pacific, who made his debut and was, I thought, very impressive because he came from off the pace. He had a little bit of trouble, and he still ended up winning in handy fashion. And I think that horse could go on and really be an important horse later in the year.
Yeah, very good. And before we let you go, just remind people you're over there tonight with the sales, and your broadcast kickoff at 6:30 each night?
Yeah, our coverage will be 6:30 Eastern Time. We'll go gavel to gavel, right from the time the first horse goes through the ring till the last horse. We'll have that coverage. We'll have different features. We'll have interviews with consigners and some of the buyers. Chad Summers is going to be part of that coverage with us. He'll be out there with the wireless microphone doing interviews. And again, it's on Sirius 93 and then streaming on our website, horseracingradio.net. And Fasig-Tipton is going to stream it alongside the video coverage of the sale.
Oh, nice, yeah, because
website.
they have the video on there. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so people, if they want to listen to our coverage and watch the sale, they can do it that way right on the Fasig-Tipton site.
There you go. And I'm sure you've been over there and talking with the folks. Is there some excitement and optimism?
Yeah, I think there is. I think after what we saw in July in Kentucky with the Fasig July sale and what the momentum that we've seen build from the 2-year-old sales earlier in the season, people very optimistic that tonight is going to be another very good sale.
Right, and again, that coverage kicks off on the Horse Racing Radio Network, 6:30 p.m. And that's interesting. Go to the Facing-Tipton site, watch the video, and pull up your audio as well. I like
Yeah.
that. You'll also cover a Hall of Fame on Friday as well for folks who can't be in Saratoga. All right, Mike Penna, Jude Feld from the Horse Racing Radio Network. Happy to have you live here. We've managed to, first few months of the year, we were talking via phone with a lot of folks, and we've gotten a few of them here on the set, which we've been happy to do. I always say Saratoga is like the crossroads of the racing world, so everybody shows up here. We had Tony Kalo from the Finger Lakes on the other day, and so a lot of our radio guests have made it to the stage, and we've been happy to have you on board.
Yeah,
Great
thanks,
to be
Seth.
here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right, and we'll take our next break. When we come back, it is Rick Violet, president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. All of that up next.
No matter where in the world you are.